So where are you?
We're down in, Grace Bay. We're just getting ready to head to dinner.
We're gonna go shovel some snow.
Yeah, it was our out places, I guess.
Yes, about 40,000.
Wow.
It's on
Okay.
35,000.
I have stakes in my middle garden.
So
Next to one by one.
Yeah.
To the house. So the snow piled up, it looks like a landslide. It did move around.
Okay.
There's no wind all day.
It will be soon.
It's 7 o'clock.
Recording in progress.
I call the March 14th, 2023 meeting of the Middlebury Selectboard order. And the first part of business is having Ann Webster, our town clerk, swear in newly elected select board members.
Yes.
That is, Brown and Isabel voted in. Brian Turkey.
Yes.
How do you get Tim around?
There we go.
Sorry.
Taking a video with us?
No, Heather offered. My mom would want. Ready,
Brian, right? So, do you solemnly swear or affirm that you'll be true and faithful to the state of Vermont and that you will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof, so help you God or under the pains and penalties of perjury? And do you further solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully execute your duties as a member of the select board of the town of Middlebury and will bear in legal right and justice to all persons to the best of your judgment and ability according to law, so help you God or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I will.
All right.
I do.
2 places for each of you to sign. And Brian, I've dated your form, and when you get back, you can sign it.
Sounds good.
This is you. And you date and sign this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, yeah.
Congratulations.
Newly formal.
Democracy rolls onward. Yes.
And now I'll take nominations for the position of chair of the select.
I nominate Brian. Sorry.
So we have a nomination and a second for Brian Carpenter as chair. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Brian Carpenter as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Lindsay, are you voting affirmative on that? Okay. So you can't hear us, Lindsay?
I think you're muted.
We can't hear her.
You are on mute.
Oh, no, you can't hear me because I was muted. Easy fix. But I couldn't hear you before. I think you just weren't close enough on talking.
Okay. So are you in favor of Brian as the chair? Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Nice.
So Brian, I will hand it over to you for take nominations for the position of vice chair.
Okay, I think my connection is really bad because I actually didn't hear much of that. So, hopefully this will go okay. So I'm seeking nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Andy.
I'll second that.
there any other nominations? So Lindsay, I was told you're in favor of rotation.
Absolutely. I've always felt like the chair position should be rotated, with the intention of helping find a candidate who would like to replace you. And I enjoyed my year serving as vice chair, and I don't think I have the time needed to commit to chairing, and you are eventually gonna want to retire. So, and, Andy, seems very, prepared and ready to step in and learn and enthusiastic, and I think that's what the town needs. So I'm very much in favor of passing that along to him.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Okay. And I didn't hear any other, that I missed, Kathleen?
No.
Okay, so all in favor of Andy as vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays, any nays? Okay, so, because I'm ducking out here, Andy, I'm gonna turn the meeting over to you.
Yeah, excellent.
Smooth.
Should I slide over or am I?
Okay, thank you. It is vacation, so
Thanks, Brian.
I'll see you later.
Have a good time.
Enjoy.
Demonstration.
No, nothing like getting hooked right into the
Ripping.
ball of fire,
I know, right? Oh, yeah, 15
huh?
seconds
So the
later.
clock is ticking.
For what?
To get us out on time.
Oh my God, yeah, we're already 7 minutes behind.
That's the only measure of your performance.
Wow, okay, thanks, Dan. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the published agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I think I heard Heather Farhart. Any modifications, we have a executive session, which includes a voting action. Okay, all those in favor of the
Aye.
moving on, the next item is the approval of the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any items that anyone would like to discuss further before we adopt them? Consent them? All right, with no discussion. All those in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, we are moving right along. We're getting there. The next item is citizen comments. This is a time for members of the public attending this meeting to discuss any item not on the agenda. Mr. McCurr, please come up.
Thank you. I'm trying to be brief. We've got a few notes here. Recently,
Please give your name.
oh,
for the,
I'm Richard McCurr. And recently this group, wisely, I think, on behalf of a group of residents who were affected by some college students practicing their self-expression, passed an ordinance to reduce the amount of noise coming from the houses that were occupied by off-campus college students. In order to protect the quality of life and the quiet enjoyment for, at least probably 25 Middlebury residents who would be affected by this nighttime noise. Maybe more, maybe 30. Now, although it's a little bit late in the game, the process I'm hoping that the select board will take a similar stance on behalf of 500 or so East Middlebury residents. A few years ago, the state legislature enacted Act 78, which encourages, I think, an ill-considered growth in state-owned airports. consideration for what happens in the neighborhood of those airports. And V-Trans is thinking of the issue in concert with this directive. This has been a rather expensive effort taken on behalf of a small group of hobbyists and business people. Maybe on the order of 20, 30 individuals whose livelihoods and hobbies relate closely to the Middlebury Airport. They're usually, today they're on average 5 cars parked at the airport on a daily basis. If that gives any indication of the number of people that are enjoying the benefits of the economic development of this area. Our airport generates noise for a lot of residents on the order of 80 to 90 decibels, many times a day. Not when it's snowing out, I get it. But if you can imagine the effect on those citizens, when it's small.
Website. This presentation will be done by Representatives Howard Miller and Lisa Ryan, and will focus on possible next steps for the town. Welcome back. Sorry it's taken so long to get you in here, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation.
Happy New Year!
Yay!
So good to see all of you.
How are you?
Are there any new faces, or is everybody returning?
I don't think I've met,
She's kind of new.
I'm kind of new. I'm Izzy. I have she, her pronouns. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Izzy, I'm
Hey,
Kathy, Tuesday. It's nice to meet you. So, we want to make sure that we're just thoughtful and not going too quickly, especially if you're like, wait, why did you all do that? Please feel free, Izzy, or anyone, because I know it's been a minute. So if any of the concepts we go over, you want to take us back and make sure that we refresh memory, we're happy to do that. Lisa and I did the same thing. We're not gonna lie. So let us go ahead and share screen. Will it allow? Oh, can I share screen, please?
Who's going to share screen? You?
Tabitha.
Voila.
And while we're getting, oh, look at me, I'm a co-host now. That's the question. All right, so let us go ahead and see if I can share. This is a great night to be Zooming. I hope everybody is safe where you all are. I've already shuttled my driving place. Yeah. So again, these results came out in July of 2022. The primary lens was racial equity as a way to understand equity in general in terms of what people experience in the town of Middlebury. What we really wanted to get a sense of was what do people experience while living, working, learning, and visiting the town of Middlebury. And so we designed a survey based on a number of different equity surveys that have been vetted throughout the U.S. and tried to pare it down because there's so much that we want to know. But we wanted to make it manageable for folks in the Middlebury community. We offered it in beginning of May, and we kept extending it because we wanted to maximize folks' opportunities to access. And it was also offered in English and Spanish. Whenever we look at survey results, one of the things that we pay attention to are results that could be outliers. Either it looks like somebody may have answered it twice by mistake or intentionally, or there may be particularly outlandish type comments that are not relevant. And so in looking at the 216 results, we identified that there may be 3 to 4 possible detractors. And you'll hear a little bit about some of that as we go through. Lisa, was this me or you? We're going to start. So the demographics of the folks who responded, you had 216 total responses, which isn't terrible, but you know, we have a lot more folks that you might want to involve in the future. 77% of respondents lived in Middlebury, and you'll notice that as Lisa and I go through, we will provide both the statistics and the actual number. We tend to do this because when you're talking about race in a state like Vermont, we know that statistical significance on its own can be difficult to tell what's going on. We'll use it more when we're comparing within the group. But we want to make sure that you have both the raw data and the statistics. One of your 215 respondents identified as a college student. 157 respondents were 45 years or older. So we wanted to look, even though we were looking at race, we also wanted to take a look at some of the other factors of identity. You have a rich data set that can be used to look at all of this stuff for years to come. And 2.8 or 6 respondents were under the age of 24. And so because we had that low response rate from younger people, and college students were gone in July, so we didn't really get a chance to engage them, Lisa and I were able to do, we added some forums to our data set that included looking at youth in Middlebury, so that we got more information about youth experience through that data. And 41% of respondents were interested in participating in the forum. We ended up having 17 people total participate in, I think, 5 forums, Lisa, that we had. And got, again, some really rich data that both supported the findings of the survey and expanded upon it. So we'll be able to talk to you a little bit about that as well. 38 respondents identified as members of the LGBTQIA+ community. The reason that we have an asterisk there is because this is where some of that detraction takes place, where we will have people write in other and then admonish the fact that we were trying to respect that people have there's so much gender diversity, and they would say there's only 2 genders, male and female, and they wouldn't actually put their own gender in there, or they would say something again outlandish. And the same thing would happen around race, that people would say I'm the human race. So didn't really give us a lot of opportunity there. But again, we only had 3 or 4 folks whose responses indicated those sorts of answers. 13 respondents identify as being the gender, beyond the gender binary, which again, that is phenomenal representation when you look at stats across the US. And 14.4% of 31 respondents identify as people with disabilities. US national average is about 26.6% of folks in the US identify as people with disabilities. So we may be a little underrepresented there. And 12.5% of 47 respondents identified as members of the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, Asian, biracial, and or people of other races communities. So again, really great representation there. Even though you only had 216, it starts to give you a sense of what people in marginalized positions are experiencing here in Middlebury. Okay. And feel free to stop us anytime, or if you want to wait till the end, either one of those works for us.
I've got 2 quick questions about just the kind of how you dealt with these. So you've got about a quarter of respondents who are not Middlebury residents. Were they included in your statistical pool?
Yes, they are, because the indicators for responding were do you live, work in, or recreate in. So the people that didn't live here either worked and recreated or recreated in the school here.
Great. And for the detractors, were all of their answers removed from the?
No.
Okay, only
No.
they were just marked that they were not playing along on some of the questions.
Right. We wanted to try to, regardless of what was going on for folks, we wanted to try to make sure we included everyone. And again, with 3 to 4 folks, there wasn't a whole lot of kind of statistical damage that could be done by including, but we feel like it could be better to include folks than to exclude them. So we did that wherever we could. Is there another question or? All right. And this is just a fun kind of reminder about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which are the indicators of thriving communities. Diversity is a fact, it's who you are. Equity is a choice in how we choose to reflect our community and allocate resources. Inclusion is an action, and belonging is the outcome that we're looking for, that folks feel a sense of belonging. So what we try to do is get all of these things in one way or another through this survey.
Okay, can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, okay, great. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the experiences of belonging. And so we really looked at, do people in the town of Middlebury feel welcome? Do they feel safe? And are there opportunities and accessible services for people who, are in the town of Middlebury or, associated with the town of Middlebury? Next slide. So we asked, is Middlebury a welcoming place? And we really looked at three main areas. That was inclusion, satisfaction, and like I said, access and experience of municipal services. We found that 57% of the people experience, I'm sorry, I just missed it. The majority of people experience the town of Middlebury as a satisfying or very satisfying place to live. So 57% of people said that. 68% said the majority of respondents are satisfied with the town of Middlebury. However, there are responses across race, which are we included inclusion, belonging, and satisfaction by percentage. You can see that for both BIPOC individuals and white individuals, if we look at inclusion and belonging as well as satisfaction, you see that 61% of people who identify as white have a positive experience with inclusion and belonging versus 38.5% of the BIPOC folks who are having a positive experience. So you can look at those kind of measures between those two groups. And then for satisfaction, about 70% of people who identify as white said they had a positive experience, in comparison to 17% who had a negative. And then as well for the BIPOC folks, 59% satisfaction compared to 15.4% who had a negative experience.
And just a quick question, because I've forgotten the survey. I'm assuming that there's a neutral category that explains the rest of these groups.
Correct. And so we recognize that bar graphs are not always everybody's favorite to try to read, but we try to use them whenever we're looking at comparing within and in between at the same time. So are there any questions about how this looks? Okay, let's move it on.
And then, so this is just a quote from a Southeast Asian woman who stated, "Most of the lack of welcome I feel here is the hyper awareness of being a person of color in a largely white context. I watch what I say and do, and I have to explain myself for my context more often." So that's a lived experience of somebody who was taking the survey and made this comment. I think, yeah.
This is me? Okay. And so what you'll notice throughout the presentation is that we tried to pull from the narrative data, which we also gave to Kathleen, a summary of all the narratives that came in. But looking at inclusion, belonging, and satisfaction, right, that those kind of 3 days of do people feel welcome here in Middlebury, these were the responses in comparison by race. So for white folks, folks felt most included around socializing, and for people of color, recreation and leisure both tied or recreation and leisure was the highest rated area of satisfaction for inclusion and belonging. And then for sorry, under that, my dog just decided that it's time to go crazy because I muted, so I apologize. You can hear them. So in the area of satisfaction, recreation was the place where folks felt most comfortable. So we're seeing some similarities there. And then for people of color, work and socializing tied at 19 each. So where people feel most satisfied, recreation, work and socializing, and then where they feel the best sense of inclusion and belonging, where they feel most welcome, the white folks and socializing. And so here's another offering from one of the respondents. I tried to become involved in things. Click seemed to be the social norm in Middlebury. I was disregarded often and made clear that I did not belong. Okay, guys, that's enough. So across race, what do we see? Learning was the area where people felt the least sense of inclusion, belonging, and safety. So whether that's experiences in primary schools or grade schools there, or experiences in college, that was an area where folks indicated that there was some concern. And retirement and socialization are a place where, again, across race, people feel the least satisfaction and the most sense of worry. Okay. My children have observed or been subject to overt racism, sexism, homophobia in public schools on a daily basis. And this is a white male who identified as the parent of children of color. And we had a number of responses that indicated that school was a big problem. So while most people indicate that they feel welcome and included, if you want to do some more exploration and work, learning, socialization, and retirement are 3 areas that you might want to consider. Turning over to safety. I don't know if folks remember, but the way that Lisa and I originally got acquainted with the town of Middlebury was after an incident where folks were concerned about a racialized police interaction, and through that we worked with Chief and with Kathleen, and so safety was a big area on your survey. So let's go ahead and take a look at some stuff here. 77% of folks feel safe or very safe overall in the town of Middlebury. So this was taking everybody across race and saying, okay, looking, because we did we had 5 options. You feel safe, very safe, somewhat safe, not safe, completely unsafe, were the areas where folks could choose. And so 77% of all respondents feel safe or very safe in the town of Middlebury. And then when we break it down by race, we see, again, agree or strongly agree, and then disagree or strongly agree. So again, looking at the 2 opposites there for each race, or group of races. For white folks, 81% as compared to 61.5% of people of color responding felt safe to very safe, or they agreed strongly. And then again, you see nearly double the percentage of people of color strongly disagreeing with their experience of safety as compared to their white peers. And I realize this looks a little scattered, so I apologize for the layout. I could have changed that up for you. So experiences of safety, right? So the first one is perception and overall feeling. This one is when do people feel most safe in Middlebury? For white folks, again, it's socializing and living. A really high percentage of folks felt safe there. And then for people of color, work and socializing was when they felt most comfortable. And then the area where they felt least safe, again, for white folks, working and learning, and for people of color, it was learning. So what we were doing here was, again, looking at the polls to figure out what's kind of our area of celebration, and then an area where we may want to look.
Sorry for the interruption, but this is a multi-select, I've forgotten the survey, it's been a while, obviously, since I've taken it. But it seems like you can choose multiple domains of your life.
Yes, that's right. So people would rank where they felt safe.
Gotcha.
And so those are the highest ranked areas, and then the lowest ranked areas.
Okay.
Okay, so they were asked to choose where do you feel safest and where do you feel least safe, and then all of the areas were ranked. And here we go for percentages, right? The percentage of BIPOC, 21 respondents, which is 81% respondents reported experiencing, witnessing, or having a loved one experience racism in the town of Middlebury, as compared to 47% of white respondents, which again, it's hard when we have statistics and then we have the numbers. But we want to make sure that we're speaking to every potential audience that could look at this data. So 47%, what is that, like, almost half, a difference there in terms of people who have experienced themselves or witnessed or had a loved one experience racism. While running the public bus, my wife was harassed on one occasion by another passenger. My Asian wife wears a hijab and, like myself, is a practicing Muslim. And again, if you go to the narrative document, it provides a lot more kind of information. We did not make that public because we were worried about identifying people based on specific characteristics. So Kathleen does have that information if that's something that internally you choose to look further into. So summarizing safety, there is a significant difference between BIPOC and white respondents' experience and sense of safety in the town of Middlebury. Learning, again, continues to be the area where all respondents indicate concern. So in the inclusion and belonging, in the sense of welcome, and then with safety as well, which those two tend to go hand in hand. And then 25% or 46 respondents who are white had never seen or heard racism in the town of Middlebury. And that, we said, maybe that's why some folks didn't understand or feel that racism is an issue that you should be focusing your time or effort on. So if a quarter of people don't know that it's a problem, they're not going to think that time or resources should be spent on it. So Lisa,
Yeah, thanks. So the next part that we looked into was opportunities in the areas of family, cultural relevance, economic opportunities, entertainment, and health and environment. So 65% of the respondents believe that the town of Middlebury has ample opportunities. They really feel like there's enough for them to do in different aspects, and that they, have ways to go out and engage in these opportunities. So Middlebury is rated as a healthy environment. 83% of people stated that, and while 77% said that it's a great place to raise children and their families.
and those are some pretty great stats. So definitely give yourself a shout for that.
One of the narratives from the individual who took the survey stated, "My spouse and I are both people of color, and we generally like it here in terms of the smaller community, access to programming and culture through the events at the college, outdoor activities, etc." One person identified as a Southeast Asian woman, not female. Another person said, however, in order looks like it was maybe the same person. However, in order to access more culturally specific things, such as grocery items, hair care, restaurants, majority BIPOC community, cultural educators from administration, and the new reinforced reading and writing and and then there were some places that, or some people that really spoke to how grateful they were that the town of Middlebury and us conducting the survey. So one person said, "Thank you for conducting the survey. It's important to be more aware of how members of the girl community of all different identities experience life in Middlebury. While my identity may allow me to feel safe and engaged most of the time, many community members do not. Looking forward to learning results in dialogue." And then, glad you're getting input from citizens. I feel there's much I need to learn from others, people of color, those with disabilities, different gender identities from my own, and welcome opportunities to enlarge my understanding of what others who are not as privileged as I am in my community. Thank you for doing this. And then lastly, there are just some intersectional areas of concern. So affordable housing, we know that this is an issue, not just in Middlebury, but across the state, really struggling with affordable housing for families and for people. Another area was accessibility to and comfort in public spaces, homelessness or houselessness, different departments within your municipal building, and diversity in food options. And then there was another, comment around Vermont State Police interactions and how that intersects with the Middlebury Police.
It's been a hot minute, but I'm wondering if you know what that specific municipal department's, was referenced. I'd have to look. Do you know off the top of your head?
We passed some information along to Kathleen back in July, that was specific, she'd have to fill you in.
Perfect, thanks.
Sorry, I just lost my screen. So our next step, Lisa, did you want to do this one or do you want me to?
Go ahead, you're already there.
Okay, so in terms of work, live, learning, and playing, I don't know if you've had a chance since we passed this data along to digest it, but if you haven't, the select board, it'd be really great to write down your main questions, concerns, conflicts, and celebration points. And then we suggest that you determine which elements have worked. Well, we already did this, we already covered basic, and you made it all right out there. And we are in the process of confirming our dates for not the fora, but we are now at the stage where we will be engaging the folks that said that they were interested in being in the DEI, the newly formed DEI committee that includes more folks from the community. If you'd like, I can give you some of the data from, or is that one of them, from the folks who participated in the forum, but again, much of it really reiterated what we were hearing. We had 17 total participants from LGBTQIA+, BIPOC, people with disabilities, immigrant, refugee, and general community. And then major themes for that. Folks love being here, but some of the experiences that they have that make it difficult to sustain living here are that, in a sense that discrimination goes unchecked in education and workplace. The lack of racial diversity is depressing and hurts white folks here, and it hurts people of color because the rich multicultural opportunities and activities aren't as robust as they could be. So that recruiting and retaining folks becomes an important objective. Political action and engagement is difficult due to how and when people are expected to participate. So when we look at that number where we had a lack of folks showing up to select for people of color, that might be an area that you want to take a look at. I certainly think that the increase in electronic means like we are tonight is one thing that helps, but there may be other things that folks want to dig into. Lack of funding for people who want to run for office or to be able to maintain to keep in it is difficult, especially for people who are younger, who aren't retired, who have access to transportation. Those are some of the things that people identify as making it difficult. And again, Kathleen has this, so you don't have to, you can write it all down, but she has it for you as well. Youth want more opportunities for civic engagement. One person, actually a few of them said, why don't we have a position on the select board with the power to vote? So your young people want to get engaged. And there were significant concerns about the way school personnel ignore, minimize, and cause harm to trans and queer youth in schools. And so some of the ideas that folks had to overcome these barriers, compensate the DEI committee members and make meetings accessible, partner with the college and the school district on identity-based equity initiatives so that you're all kind of working together. Government service should be held in Spanish language as well. So that anything that you're doing, and I noticed that you have your closed captioning, do you have an interpretive option? Privilege marginalized voices at meetings and then centering around decision making, right? Because whenever we use majority rules as our decision making, people in the minority, have a much more difficult battle to fight to be seen and represented. More visible resources for parents and families regarding LGBTQI youth identity development and experiences. Offer childcare and address the affordability of childcare in the community. Keep voting easy. They like that. They'd like explicit plans for large employers, schools, towns, and hospitals, tying compensation to the skilled labor required of BIPOC in Middlebury. We need bold leadership to acknowledge the reality that people of color, we call it the black tax. There's a tax that is paid to be there, so folks are suggesting that you create a compensation for that. And continue to offset the black tax that people in country age groups have to pay. We call it black tax, but we also know that folks who are disabled, folks who are English as a second language, all have to pay it as well. To be at the table, make decisions. No one else is expected to educate about their identity and how identity plays a role in work that some of us are expected to do. And address the housing shortage and affordability. So that is the data from the forum for us.
Thanks so much. I'm wondering if the committee members on the board have more to add to this.
From my point of view, this was a result of a long years worth of work that we did. Especially thank you to Diane, Lisa, and Lindsay, and everybody else involved in this. I think I have no concerns. I'm very happy with this.
Lindsay, are you gonna share your thoughts and next steps?
The demands of the household.
Well,
I feel you, Lindsay. My dogs are whining at you right now. One's trying to get hamburgers.
I unmuted myself when my kids screamed, and now the dog is here, so I'm sorry.
Perfect. No worries.
What I was gonna say is, I really appreciate this process, and Kathleen and I had the opportunity to work with another organization and see how they did it through VLCT, which was an amazing opportunity that they offered to all Vermont, all VLCT towns. But I really have just appreciated how connected I have been able to feel with the two of you, and how accessible you've made the material. And I'm really excited for this next step. It did feel like there was such a lag, and I think we're all tired, but now that we're ready to move into the next phase, I think there'll be an infusion of energy, and I just really appreciate the work you put in.
We know that town meeting days are big, and putting together all your reports takes a lot of energy from January to March, so we understand.
Any other comments or questions?
I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I am a teacher within the schools, and I think everything that you said about what's happening in our schools is really valid. And I want to point out to anyone who is interested in kind of knowing where that overlap is. I think that this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is also a priority of the schools, and all of the intersections that we talked about today, where we're seeing multiple towns also interacting with Middlebury, and they might not necessarily have a home here or live here. I think that is a very helpful feeling to have.
So there was an interesting generational thing. I'm ESG committee at work, and we're getting consulting. Yeah, environment, social, and governance, trying to align your business with bigger issues and do the right thing. But the presenter said that 75% of the workforce will be millennials by 2025. I'm like, wow. Wait, how is that possible? Millennials are 15 birth years, and our workforce is around 40, 45 years. There's no way that one 15-year cohort could be 75% of the workforce. Anyway, he doubled down on it, and I no longer trust him on things numeric anymore. Anyway, moving on. Agenda item.
I thought some of that had to do with early retirement that happened with the older cohort during COVID.
Everyone else would have to be gone. You know, everyone else would have to be gone for it to be 75% of the workforce from those.
I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So that's
Anyway.
fair.
Emily.
must have leave early, I'm very sorry. I sent a message, but I don't know if anyone saw it, but you have a
It's over
forum
there.
without me. I support you. You well.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Have a good night.
Take care. Our next agenda item is number 9, infrastructure committee updates. I will pass this over to Emily and Heather for
Emily can take it.
a bunch of great items.
You don't want it again, Heather? Okay, so just some updates. I applied for 7 different, applications for priority, or put us in for 7 different applications for the priority list, both for drinking water. 4 of them were for the drinking water fund, and then 3 for clean water, which encompasses wastewater and sewer, or wastewater and stormwater. The one that I think we probably have the highest likelihood of receiving is for the Chipman Hill water tank. And now that we have a positive bond vote and a construction permit has been submitted for that, that greatly increases our scoring, which is how they get awarded. So I think we'll be in pretty decent standing for that one. I'm hoping, fingers are still crossed. We'll find out in usually May, June is when they put out the list. And then the other one, some of them, South Street, I submitted for the water line that we currently have out to bid. Just not knowing what those numbers were going to come back in like. If we did have to hit pause on the project, I figured we might as well go after a source of funding if needed. But we had planned to utilize our funding as much as possible for that one. And then Foot Street water line, Gorham Lane water line replacement, those are both in engineering, so a little further out. But it also puts it on the state's radar that we're proposing these projects in the future, so they can sort of keep it in the back of their mind in terms of their budgeting needs. And then for the clean water, I submitted the Rogers Road pump station, which we have in engineering, but that one is very similar to Halliday Road, so the engineering piece of it will move pretty quickly. And we had originally planned to construct that next year, so that would get us on track for hopefully getting funding to get that one in place. And then South Street, the sewer stormwater piece of it, we do have a grant for that combined sewer overflow separation project, but just given the numbers that we're seeing these days, I figured it wouldn't hurt to apply for extra funding if we need it. And then Bakery Lane, we saw numbers that were much higher on that project as well for the initial engineer's estimate, so I put it in for that one. So again, most of them are probably a long shot, but I think Chipman Hill, we have a pretty good chance of receiving something out of that. And moving on, speaking of Chipman Hill, the tree clearing has been completed, and it looks pretty good. We're sort of in a pause mode now until early May, so that we can pump down the reservoir after threats of frost have moved on, hopefully moved on. That way, the concerns for amphibians and reptiles that are burrowed in will be alleviated. The critters that are still migrating to the site, I've reached out to one of the residents on the hill who initiated the concern, and hopefully he had initially said that he'd be willing to help coordinate some efforts to relocate, but I've talked to a few other community members since then too that want to be involved. So we'll just have a nighttime 50-degree rainy May party up on Chipman Hill, relocating critters if anyone wants to be involved in that.
That's wonderful. That overflow pond down there is a very active spring keeper location. I'm glad
I would,
they gave your.
yeah, I would imagine it's it's a great location. The neighbor on the hill who originally brought the concern up said that he knows of a few other spots all locally on that hill that we can potentially relocate them to. So hopefully it won't be too much of an effort to move them out, but I know there will be some sacrifice, but if we can make our best effort to
I'm not sure where it is.
It's just below the existing the existing
I,
tank?
I've gone up there a gazillion times, and I don't know, I know what a tank is, obviously, but I don't know what a pond.
Yeah, if you just walk over the hill towards town, there's,
It's quite visible now.
I bet it is.
It was a little bit covered in by a lot of down trees, but now it's been cleared out, so it's the old 1928 reservoir, I think was the year. And then later swimming pool, perhaps. So that construction permit was submitted at the end of February. Like I said, that increases our scoring for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And then I also reached out to the Northern Borders Regional Commission. They'll be posting their grants shortly here. But I think that one involves writing a letter of intent, and then those applicants that they choose, they reach back out to for the actual application in the spring. So I'll be submitting a letter of intent, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed for that one. Holiday Road Pump Station, we have been continuing our conversations with Malt regarding obtaining an easement adjustment. Essentially, we had proposed an easement on the south side of our parcel. Our parcel is completely encapsulated by the residence property and also this conservation area. And so the generator house is about 100 square feet. It might be a little bit more than that. It's not a lot, but it would be onto that conserved land. And it's clearly defined in Malt's language that buildings cannot be constructed on their conserved land. So they're trying to talk to their legal team to see if there would be ramifications for their conservation. It's not licensing, but how they're recognized at the state level and also at the federal level. They have some concerns that if they gave us an easement or did a boundary adjustment, it might jeopardize their conservation. But I did meet with our engineer today. One of our potential options is to move the generator housing in closer. There is room for it to be located on our parcel, but it would be very tight to the pump station. And constructability, it's possible. It'll make it a little bit more difficult. We are looking into the engineering codes. The electrical engineer got back to Otter Creek and said that there were no conditions on their end. We're still waiting to hear back from mechanical engineering to see if there are any code violations from moving it that close to the pump station. If that alternate doesn't work out, we do have an option of putting it on the northern side of the pump station, which would be in the wetland buffer. I know Heather had mentioned at our infrastructure committee meeting the concern of it being in the 100-year floodplain, and it's not, but still obviously not ideal. I don't think it's in the town's best interest to impact the wetland or the buffer if we can avoid it. I did reach out to our local regulator, and we can get a wetland permit approved if need be, but obviously that's the last route that I would like to take. I'm hoping we can get it just moved inside our own parcel limits and move forward with that. We should know within the next couple of days. We did sign the contract award today, just so that the generator and various components can start getting ordered, since there's a long lead time on some of those. Moving on, any questions on that? So the police, the storage building, the HVAC improvements have begun to get installed. I met our crew over there yesterday. Newton was working on installing some things. I think they should be done within a week, they were looking at. And then we have Northern Basement coming in at the beginning of April to do the sump pump and the drainage work down in the basement. And then we got a quote for the 2 doors to be installed also that will be for discussion further on down our list. So that project is in good shape and should be wrapping up early spring. UVM capstone in Mary Hogan Elementary. I'm continuing my work with the UVM students. I received some preliminary design presentations this week. We went through those and they have final presentations planned for the end of March, or no, the end of April is their design poster night, and then May 10th is their final design presentations. And they're really hoping that people can attend those presentations. And I need to reach out to them to find out if there's a Zoom option, but I know that they were hoping for in-person attendance as well.
Great, and that's in the engineering.
What's that?
That's in the engineering department of UVM.
Yeah, so the two that I've met with this week are both in the engineering department. I'm also working with a group, I forget, it's Stephanie Hurley's the professor, and she's not Rubenstein, I forget what school she's in. But she's done a lot of green infrastructure and low impact sort of design on campus there, and also research around. And so they're doing one for the Mary Hogan site, for the town portion of Mary Hogan site. So I'm meeting with her the end of this month. I think that's the 27th, but I need that team out there. So I think it'll be pretty neat. So 2 of the groups are engineering, and so definitely have more of that component. And the Stephanie Hurley's is more of a design, and it'll be like rain gardens and things like that, but without all the modeling that the other students are looking at.
Less CAD work.
Yeah. And then I taught a course at Mary Hogan 2 weeks ago now, I guess, for water quality. They were doing a unit on erosion and issues like big earth concepts, tornadoes and things like that. And so we broke it down into erosion and then pollution and stormwater, my favorite topic. And so that was good. We went out back and were able to look at Orange Brook, and we're working on a grant out there that they'll be potentially helping us plant to do a riparian planting back there if we get the funding approved on that one. So that will be kind of neat to go full circle with them. And then South Street, the project went out to bid late February with a closing on March 20th, so next week. We had a decent response. I do have some concerns. Our engineer estimate came in high. I mean, everything's coming in high. So it's higher than what we had initially anticipated, and I'm hearing rumors of some of our common contractors being so busy and unable to find enough help that they're struggling to bid on projects. So I think we'll have to circle back when we see what we get in for bids. It's just, I think I talked to the engineers today about it. If we don't get a decent turnout, and for a project that size, if you just get one bid, I don't think you necessarily want to accept just that one bid. I think it would be worthwhile to potentially split it into smaller projects, which is feasible, the way it's designed. So we could do it as smaller packages, and that might invite smaller companies to become interested in it also. So I think we'll circle back once we see what we get for interest on that one. But we do have the pipe ordered to be delivered in May. And we can cancel it if need be. I'm sure another municipality would love to take it off our hands, but I would love to at least see part of that project move forward, if not all of it. So I think more to come. We'll see how creative we got to get. And then moving on, is Zeke on right now? Did we lose him?
You want me to promote it?
Let me do an introduction, and then I feel like he should be promoted to panelist, yeah. So we, at a recent infrastructure meeting, we met with Summit Properties, who they've been working with the town pretty intensively recently on a proposal to develop a parcel on Seminary Street Extension. And it would be a, mixed housing development project it would align with the town's traditional neighborhood design standards. So it would be high density compact housing with bike ped access, community gardens, open green space, access to public transit. And so it's a multi-stage process to get it to go through, but essentially the first stage of it that Zeke's been working heavily on is to get the funding secured to get the infrastructure in. And then Zeke, I hope I'm not misrepresenting, but this is my understanding. You can correct me when you chime in. For the first stage will be to build out the infrastructure, and then it will build out some of the family homes, the individual homes, and then it would move on to the complex, the bigger housing complexes. What are you chiming in before I dig too deep, Zeke?
Sure. Well, I think the exciting kind of announcement I have based on that introduction is on Monday, we were awarded $6 million from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency to build missing middle.
Oh, sorry. Oh my, Stonecrop. I'll get this. No, I think we're good. Thanks very much.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Zeke.
Bye.
Okay.
All right. On to
Uh,
Gorham Lane.
Moving on, Gorham Lane, so I introduced this to the infrastructure committee 2 meetings ago, to get approval to move forward with engineering a water line replacement there. I know that was one of it's on our priority list in this project that Dan had mentioned. The roadway is a series of patches at this point, but there's not much point in really fixing it until we actually do this project. But there is some concern expressed about the sewer and stormwater that also may need to be brought up to code or brought up to speed. So I did research that, and I think the sewer got replaced in the 90s. And so I think that's been dealt with. Stormwater, I think there's a really high groundwater table there, and so stormwater has been installed, but there might be room for improvements. So from circling back with the engineer with Otter Creek, the way we left it is that we would do survey during this phase. And I know Kathleen forwarded me on a letter today from a resident over there. So I think this is sort of the perfect time to look at the survey, look at the grades that we have, if there's a possibility for detention. I don't think there's any possibility for infiltration over there, but there might be room for building some sort of detention system that helps alleviate some of the stormwater pressure. But we can circle back with that, and if there is the possibility, we'll add it as a change order to this existing contract, but at least that way, if it's not feasible, we're not adding any additional burden or cost to this. So I'm asking for the select board to approve this proposed version of the engineering agreement for $48,000 for Otter Creek Engineering.
I'll move to authorize an agreement with Otter Creek Engineering for $48,000 for the Gorham Lane project.
Sure.
The 48,000 doesn't include the sewer and stormwater, right?
Correct.
Right.
It'll include survey, so it will let us know, like, if we have grades that we can make something work, and then we'll do a change order for stormwater.
So an agreement with Otter Creek Engineering for $48,000 for the Gorham Lane project for the water line, and then if there's additional work, that will come as a change order.
Great. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Please say
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Onward.
So back in December, I submitted the Transportation Alternatives Grant for a stormwater feasibility study. And my intent was to bring our expired permits, we have 4 3-acre permits that we need to get into compliance. And so the goal of this was to bring those up to a 30% plan and then also review the town plan where stormwater is mentioned to see how many of those components are feasible and what we should be promoting and moving forward with. And it sounds like there is a little bit more money available than initially thought. So the state recommended that we increase our request to $50,000 to better achieve our goals. So I submitted them an email immediately that we wanted to request more money.
Yeah.
It does increase our match. But we should be finding out, I think, potentially this week if we receive it. So I think we're in pretty good standing for that.
Is that cash match or do we do it with labor?
It can be a mix, actually. So there is some, depending on how we do it, we can be boots on the ground sort of match.
Nice.
I'll move to approve the amended transportation alternatives application for the town of Middlebury to the Vermont Agency of Transportation, increasing requested funding to $50,000 with a matching requirement from the town of $10,000.
Second.
Perfect. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fantastic.
Okay, circling back to the work that is being done, well, I guess this is 2 different components. Dan had put out an RFP ages ago for work at the current DPW building and also at the police station for the 2 doors that I mentioned previously. And so we finally got quotes back from one local builder. And I guess I'll start with the public works would be to replace soffit and trim, install a new gable and vent, and install a new awning and replace 3 doors with steel doors. One of them would have a window. And at the police station, it would just be the 2 doors, one to separate the main storage bay where the vehicles drive in, and then the other one is at the top of the basement stairs to help control moisture and air issues that we're having over there. So we are requesting that the select board approve the 2 proposals from Rob's Home Improvements for $22,220 to complete the work at the DPW building, and then $6,200 to complete the installation of the 2 doors at the police station storage building.
I'll move to approve the proposed contract with Rob's Home Improvements for $22,220 to complete improvements to the public works building.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. I move to approve the proposed contract with Rob's Home Improvements for $6,200 to complete improvements to the police station storage building.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Okay.
I was going to make a comment about sole sourcing and request for bids on this, and I didn't want to hold it up, but I do want to make sure we're following our procurement policy.
Yes, I think we have been. That project has been 4, 5 years in the trying to complete with
Yes.
difficulty, like having contracts and then the contractor not getting it done. And so in this particular case, we have somebody that's willing, the price seems reasonable.
Great.
I think I'm okay with just.
Okay. Very good. Just checking. Thanks.
But I do.
I believe this was all in response to Dan's RFP, so I think he did advertise it, but just didn't get much response.
No, understood. Thanks.
South Street, we are working with Landmark Engineering for professional services for both the water line and the subsequent wastewater and stormwater line work. And the initial concept was to just take the plans that were developed from Green Mountain Engineering and do some very minor modifications to them to bring them over to Landmark. And in doing that, Landmark realized that some of the survey and the elevations were very far out and it was going to significantly impact the sewer line and the constructability of the project. And so he's requested additional funding to essentially deal with those issues now and redesign the project now, as opposed to finding the issue in the field and having change orders down the road. I think in reality, it will help us on the next phase too, now that he's made note of these concerns when he gets into doing the sewer and stormwater work. He'll already have this,
Makes sense.
so, yeah.
I'll move to amend the agreement with Landmark Engineering on the South Street project, increasing the total cost by $2,580 to a total of $31,876.
Second.
Fantastic. One second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Lead service line inventory. So there is a federal and state mandate that we have to do a lead service line inventory of all of the water lines in the town of Middlebury. So it's anything that is smaller than 2 inches is what they want an inventory of, and that includes the private portion of the lines that we are heating.
Boy.
And, yeah, with a deadline of October 16th, 2024.
Huh?
So,
How do you do
so there's sort of a few different ways that we can tackle it. They're not asking us to dig at this point. I think that will be a subsequent request when we actually find any lead or galvanized components. But essentially, it's this extensive spreadsheet that they've come up with. And so if we're doing any water line work and we happen to be working around the curb stop and notice a gooseneck or something like that, we can mark it down at that time. We also have to potentially go into people's homes and do an investigation in that part of their home. The good thing about this is that our crew is currently swapping out all of our endpoints right now, which is the actual, you have the meter, and then it's the reader at the end of the meter that gives the digital signal back to our system. So our old endpoints are no longer reading, and we've had to upgrade with new endpoints. And so we have an extensive job. I think they still have 1,600 endpoints or something within that proximity to swap out. And so they've been pretty diligent when they are doing this work to make note of lines that they notice as being lead or galvanized. So we have that in the house inventory. There's obviously the section between our service or our distribution line and, you know, the front yard after the curb stop. We have no idea necessarily.
Right.
And it could change. You know, at the curb stop, it could be one material and then go back to lead, and we'll never have knowledge of that. So there's still some unknowns with this process, but the state is helping us out financially. At this point, they have allocated just over 302,000, which is what they estimate this to cost the town.
Wow.
Yeah. So in addition to that, or I guess in consideration of us having to do this work, I think it's a good time to have a conversation about doing an asset management plan, which sort of, it will sort of build on this, but it will be more of a long-term plan for our water lines. And so it takes into consideration our level of service, just the priorities and goals for the system. It has an inventory and condition assessment. It could be a life cycle cost analysis, a risk assessment, risk and life cycle cost reduction, and then can also involve funding strategies. And so we can sort of play, those are the components that the state looks at. We can add to it. The state does forgive the first $50,000 of an asset management plan. And in circling back, and it's funded through those same drinking water state revolving funds that I mentioned earlier. you score, I think it was 75 points as a municipality if you have an asset management plan. So for all of those submittals that I just did, if we had that box checked, we would get an extra 75 points to help us fund our water projects moving forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's an investment now. There is some help, some forgiveness, the $50,000. And my understanding is that $50,000, they also see that as the preliminary report for the lead service line inventory. So it sort of gets used both ways, on both plans. So I propose that we move forward with an asset management plan, knowing that we also have this lead service line inventory coming at us. I think it'll help us in the future and secure more funding in the future for our water needs.
I just have a question. Where is the $302,000 coming from?
So that
It's not
is through the SRF funding, and there is an initial loan forgiveness. The service line inventory is a repayment period of 5 years. But then we qualify for a disadvantage subsidy for up to $100,000 and a 50% subsidy for the portion over $100,000. So that initial forgiveness comes to like just over $200,000 for the town.
Okay.
So really, like of that $302,000 loan, we are only on the hook for $100,000 of it and change.
And do we have $100,000 of that in our budget?
It's not in our budget right now, but we haven't done the water budget yet.
But this has to be completed by the 16th.
Right, it's a 5-year revolving loan
Not
fund.
not this October, the following.
Yeah, now following up, so we've got, okay.
So it would be in like the next fiscal year budget, right?
We don't have to start repaying it until 5 years after the agreement.
Okay,
So it's not an instant
and
repayment.
what is the $300,000 go? Is that paid, it sounds like it's just paying for labors, for somebody to do this inventory.
Yeah, so the engineers that I've talked to are sort of using a guideline of $150 to $200 a service.
So who does this? Does the water department do this survey?
We could do some of it in-house, like I will be able to do some of it in-house, we'll be able to take the data that the water department is getting from their endpoint, exchanges. So it's an enormous spreadsheet that the state's compiled that has to get filled out, and so for every single service, you have to go through this list, and just, check the boxes of if you see galvanized, if you see lead, just all these different components. And unknown is an option, but then you have to circle back to it later. It doesn't completely get you off the hook. So the state did reserve this funding for us, and so it's sort of a moving target. Right now, it's based on a federal rule that's also being revised as we're working. And so right now, it's just to create an inventory and a plan to deal with these lead components. And from talking to Dan, he doesn't think we have much lead in our system, if any. So I hope he's right. I think there are things like, I can go through our plans, and pick off neighborhoods, because the lead could not be used after, I forget the exact date, but it was 1989. So if we have neighborhoods built after that, it's pretty low hanging fruit that we know there's no lead in that neighborhood. We still have to go through the spreadsheet and check the boxes, but it's.
No, there's nothing, right? There's no voting action here. Great. Perfect. We're almost done, I think. Yeah, you're done. That's the end of infrastructure for this meeting. Only for an hour.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Emily. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Emily. She's really
I think I
doing
taste lead.
fabulous work.
She seems to have a excellent command of everything going on in our complex.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
this, we have a lot, talk about keep sticking to time schedule for infrastructure committee. And we have all these great things to talk about, but
Yeah. And the chief joined us for agenda item number 10, and it's 8 o'clock, exactly like it says here. The memorandum of understanding with the Turning Point Center of Addison County regarding the second allocation of the National Opioid Settlement Funds. Chief? Oh, all right, we're gonna get a little guitar.
Hi there, I'm
Hey,
here.
all
I
right.
have no idea what this camera is doing.
It looks like it's maybe the back camera or something that's, anyhow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, we don't need to see your face, we know what you look like.
Yeah, the town received $27,000 of change from the National Opioid Settlement to the Attorney General's office. We decided that we would give half to the Turning Point Center of Addison County, the other half to CSAC. They've got functional substance abuse remediation programs, opioid remediation programs. And we're here now just to get the last part of that Turning Point Center of Addison County. It came in different amounts, but this will give them their half, the rest of their half.
So I'm not great at math, but I don't see how 4,500 is half of 18,500.
The total amount is 27,000 and change.
Yeah.
The halfway point is 13,943.32. We've already given Turning Point Center of Addison County $4,000 something dollars.
Gotcha.
So this is the balance of that
I
13,000.
was missing a piece of math. Okay, great. And we do not need an MOU with CSAC for the other. It's already approved. Oh, it's already. Yeah,
We have executed MOUs with both.
Great.
And they're providing us a summary of what exactly this money is being used for.
Yeah.
In the event there's an audit trail, we can show that it's going directly to substance abuse remediation.
Fantastic. Anything else we should know about this before we vote?
No, that's pretty much it. This was a bunch of money that came from the manufacturers of different opioids, and we're putting it directly into functional services to remediate the addiction.
Great. Seems like the right use for the fund.
Yeah, that was my opinion too.
Thanks, Chief. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the MOU between the town of Middlebury and the Turning Point Center of Addison County, which will transfer $4,565.97 in National Opioid Settlement Funds provided to the town to Turning Point.
Second.
Excellent. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks for hanging in there, Tom.
Yeah, right on time.
I've got the Ranger game on in the background.
That's good.
That's why the camera.
All right, the next item is mine. Since Lindsay's abandoned me to it. The report at Brian. Maybe I should give it to Kathleen instead. The report of the town college meeting that was last Friday. I was very favorably impressed at how much could be covered in an hour with a meal. The college, they started talking about their energy projects, in particular ideas for renewing hydro in Middlebury at the dam, which I thought was very exciting. Their collaboration with Pale Blue Dot, which of course the Energy Committee had brought to us previously. There was discussion about the new childcare facility over on Weaver Street, and in particular, engineering coming back there, indicating that for the number of parking spaces that are required under our zoning would be much more expensive than the number that are used in other places of equivalent size effectively. And I guess they were probably going to come to our suggested that they always need to think about fire trucks. You always need to think about fire trucks. What else? We discussed housing and enrollment levels. They are still dealing with this glut of students and the weirdness of COVID that's showing up now in larger graduating classes in February and smaller graduating classes in May than they expect, and a lot of people who are sticking around and spreading it out over 4.5 years instead of 4, and they're not going to get back to their target enrollment for at least another year. Is that right, Kathleen? But they are still pursuing additional campus housing projects, although they decided not to go with marble floors and fancy siding, as David Provo said when the architect presented it. Now imagine it with falling. So I thought that was pretty good.
Marble would hold up.
Yeah, and I suggested that the goal was that you could just close things down.
Floor drains.
That's right, absolutely. But in Florida, everything is a big shower. Childcare and housing, energy. We brought to them some of our big projects. Definitely the library, which they're very aware of and interested in putting on, looking about the importance of libraries and bring some of their people in town for that. And, yeah, they were not, as they indicated, suggesting they were going to put up a large portion of the $15 million identified price tag, but excited about it, very collaborative, cooperative, invested, all of those good things. We mentioned, of course, the big South Street water projects, the wastewater modernization, and the huge potential price tag attended there too. Yeah, and Holiday Road is also listed here. Yeah, having Sue Ritter and David Provo there, who've been engaged with us over the issues around student behavior off campus. We, of course, touched on that some. And they brought back the question about getting an annual permit for their events. I'm not sure that we want to provide blanket permits. I'd like, for at least for some period of time, to solicit neighbor input as those things are happening. We know everything's going on. I thought it was great. It was very exciting, in particular because David Provo left the table 4 or 5 times for phone calls that he was getting because Monterey and the campus out there had no power and hadn't because of the storms for quite some time, as well as they were involved in the Silicon Valley Bank in some ways through their investments, and that was happening like exactly during lunch. The things were changing there, so there was a little panic. Yeah, added a little energy to things. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions about this?
So this meeting was not as rushed as Bianca.
Our meeting is squash.
And the word that I also heard from you was that you were in a place without acoustics, and it was tough to all engage. And yeah, we got to use the president's new enclosure on our porch, which was great. Public spring, was the heaters, but it was very nice.
While we won't be able to offer that in May,
We
did secure a room at Middlebury for lunch. So we'll have some more privacy, better acoustics, more important.
Great.
Thank you for that.
Oh, of course. The next item is the agenda for the select board retreat in 2 weeks. Kathleen provided a draft of it, as well as a ebook I've not yet read on how to have effective retreats. glance at it, and we'll make sure that I've read it before it comes to pass.
What do you need from us?
So you wanna take a look at this and get me any comments you have before the next meeting? We'll be meeting next Tuesday, primarily for the airport. Non-agency transportation update, but this is also on that, finishing this agenda up for the 28th.
I would love to have some more conversation about stone. Stonecroft.
So I feel so bad for that.
The stone,
Stone Town.
the stone housing development.
Stonecroft Meadows.
Just, thinking a little more about the cost analysis and how that works and how we just feel a little more comfortable on that. And I don't know that that was really on the C list.
So that it's under other strategic planning issues for discussion, housing, but I'll put that specifically.
Okay. You know, and then for me, priority lists, you know, I'm always interested in, like, I know what everybody knows what my priorities are, but I'm curious what things, you know, like, I'm always interested to hear what the rest of the board is thinks of as priorities for them. So some time to hear from each person on what they think is priority is always interesting and helpful to me, so that's one suggestion I have. I don't know how constructive it is, but I find it interesting to know.
Oh, I think it's super useful to know the perspectives and priorities of the
We-
different
we-
members.
What we've done before is we've taken a list of all the items that we have before us, and we've prioritized them.
Sure.
And after we prioritized them, we discussed them, and then we came up with our top 3 or 5 priorities in town.
No, but we did that once, what you're asking about, that we, each of us filled out our priorities, what's more important to us.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that was before we did that. Everybody, each of us filled out our own. I said Maple Broadband was the top for me, right?
Yeah.
That? So everybody did that, and housing was important for some people.
Sure.
And I don't know that we need to go into that detail, like, I still think housing is priority and childcare.
They're given.
But just spending a few minutes to know what other people are thinking about, like what other things come to the top of the list for.
Yeah.
I'm
I think that's a great use of time.
I'm just talking.
Honestly, yeah. In a less audience
I'm
focused
also,
forum.
I know I'm taking up all this time, but I'm also curious what the rest of the board thinks about what we need to try to get funded next year and bond votes next year, and sort of strategy on some of that stuff. So,
Okay.
no, not necessarily.
Library, school, no.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think
Subcommittee
that's fine.
subcommittee assignments, you know, like so the idea is that we pick like 3 and not try to do like too much.
We had 3 offsites last year.
Yeah.
We did 3 times.
We did?
Yeah.
I'm here.
It was 2 years ago.
2 years, 3 years ago.
Wow.
We did 5. Okay,
I think that's what
time
we're going
is-
through. the
yeah.
it's a war right now, but
Yeah, I think it's possible that we could benefit from more than 1 2-hour meeting to discuss our priorities. Not that I'm a glutton for meeting.
And maybe not necessarily all about priorities, but just discussing some of the other things, you know.
Dylan rules.
Yeah.
yes. Will Dylan be here?
One will be there.
Okay.
You know, and anyway,
No, I think that's totally valid. Any other pieces for this?
so by next meeting, we have to finalize
The agenda for the next meeting.
what the agenda is for this, right?
And of course, we can always modify the agenda. We start off.
Next week.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've got that back.
back to back.
All right, that's good. Make sure you're ready for the next meeting and have all of your agenda items ready.
Keeping in mind that, the retreat is planned for March 28th, which is the following week.
Yes.
If there's anything that needs a lot of research or development, please let me know ASAP, not next Tuesday.
Of course. Thanks.
And what time did we decide to have that?
6.
6.
The 28th is the 6th?
No. Yeah. It's 6, oh, it's 6.
Oh, okay, that's okay. And what time is the 4th?
7.
7.
Community development block grant.
Oh,
Public hearing.
Are we gonna do that in person?
Or you'll have, always have the option of Zoom.
I was expecting to see.
That would be,
Just
Five.
one done?
Five of that.
Okay.
All right,
so,
for Fred at home, not me.
I'm sorry, before you went, did anything that I mentioned tonight, do you think that requires a lift on your end as far as research or?
If you want some analysis of what the impact of stone crop
Oh.
would be, that would be.
Yeah, no, I'm not, no, I didn't mean actual numbers, I was thinking about like how, you know, some discussion about how we figure that, like, like, I don't even know what to ask for now, you know?
Yeah.
So like, what are we looking for to know? Not providing us actual numbers. Just some discussion about it, like,
Sure.
is anyone else, am I the only one that thinks about that, or is anyone else having?
no, we're all thinking about that, but the grand list is gonna have a huge bump up with that, and we just need to have to figure out how much that grand list bump up is gonna be, and what's the extra cost in the town. It's only a
Yeah.
10-minute exercise.
And I think
On the
it's,
back,
the way I think about this, Heather, is that if you have dense housing,
Yeah.
there's less road and sidewalk and water line for each unit than much of our existing infrastructure. And while, it might tip us over the point where we need another public works person, these houses don't bear that much cost. These residences are actually cheaper for the town than more spread out neighborhoods that are already existing. And while we could do an analysis, I'm sure that shows, oh yeah, we've got to add this truck at this position and whatever. I don't know if that's fair to the potential residents of this new. That's my view of things, and the reason that I don't know about whether the analysis is an exercise that we need to really. Just my opinion, I'm fine with
So how?
all select
So
board,
when, so when the town takes, you know, it's
Yeah.
like,
it is, well, we're right on schedule, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you're doing it too much.
If I have a question, I'm sorry about that, I will, in the future, be much more solid. Should we move on to check warrants?
yes.
Who reviewed our check warrants?
I think it said right there. I have done the check on today, everything's fine. I move to approve total expenditure in the amount of $5,363,180.91, consisting of $5,246,465.41, for accounts payable and $116,715.50 for payroll for the period of March 1, 2023 to March 14, 2023. Yes, yes.
A second.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, gentlemen. Oh, fantastic. Moving on to board member concerns before our executive session. Starting on the short leg of the table. Yeah.
I just want to comment, it was really exciting to have an in-person, last Monday night. I got a couple ideas to suggest to make it better for next year. Oh, you want to hear them now?
Sure, why not?
Just quick. I would really like to see the select board facing outward, and so we can look at people when they talk.
Yeah, I was
So they
definitely.
so they can address
At
us.
the town meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, the town meeting.
They can't.
Oh, I
address
forgot
us.
about that.
Have to address them.
Correct. But they're gonna give us a stink eye or something, but I would like that. And, I thought the microphone placement should be different. So,
Maybe having the active mic a little closer to the front.
yes.
Can I-
Instead of the moderator.
Can
just
I-
not-
Can I chime in on that?
Please.
Yeah, so I had a few people, talk about why we were stuck behind everybody. And I was watching MCTV the next day and I can't see visible windshield, I just see a little bit of your head, that's all I can see. I did talk to Kurt about the sound and he acknowledges that he knew the issue and he was going to reach out to Kathleen. It has to do with them trying to match up some of the equipment with the audio system at the high
Sure.
school, which caused some issues in what he said.
Good. Yeah, I'll get to my own, this one.
Just thanks to everyone who came out to vote.
Yay, democracy.
Dan stole my thunder, 'cause I was gonna say the same things about town meeting that he did. So nothing more there. And then I was gonna ask about make sure I had upcoming meetings correct in my calendar, but we kind of already did that, so I think I'm all set.
Great. My only follow-on to Dan's comment is, yeah, it was great to be in person. I love the town meeting and I feel badly when you've got 100 people
Yeah.
approving $8 million budget.
That's a concern.
8 million.
Wasn't that the tax revenue on our $12 million?
Yeah, no, but the budget's almost 13.
Right, okay, right, but the revenue, the revenue which they
The
approved.
taxes.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no, I'd love to also brainstorm ways beyond improving the presentation, to increase attendance back towards where it was. Great, and so with that, let's get on to our executive session.
I pulled up the motions from an older agenda, if you would like me to read them.
That sounds fantastic.
In accordance with, I'll try. In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of a real estate matter would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the. Did I have that right? It is a property, right?
Yes.
Yeah. In public. Sorry.
Perfect. Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss a real estate matter under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, we are now in executive session. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
If we could add those motions back to the new style agenda notes, please, that would be great.
Right on time.